Well, hey everyone, welcome to a little Q&A from the new greenhouse, temporary, of course. I'm not going to show you this yet because we are supposed to get really big winds tonight and tomorrow, and I'm waiting to see if it's still going to be in the same place by the end of the day tomorrow before I talk about it or before I move any plants into it because I don't have a lot of faith. So I decided to throw in a little impromptu Q&A because all of a sudden I'm starting to get a lot of emails and messages with kind of general garden questions, which makes perfect sense. We're all thinking about it now, and this is when questions arise. So I thought, you know what, let's do a Q&A. So I put up a note on the posts or community tab of YouTube on, I think, Sunday. Got a whole bunch of really good questions, and we are going to kind of rapid fire go through almost all of them that I have here. And it is cocktail hour, so cheers. I'm going to try not to dwell too long on any of these and kind of rapid fire my way through these. Who does a great job with Q&As and moving through them quick is Jim Putnam. He is like the master. No, you can't get out that way. He is like the master of the Q&A. How do you make growing food more manageable? My family doesn't help grow. It's just me. I find I'm too busy to get a really good yield, but I love eating my own produce, vegetables, and being healthy. How can I show my family it's Well, I don't have a lot of advice for husbands, but I would say the main way to get kids involved in it is to give them a task. I mean, by the way, I don't have kids, but I have gardened with kids at various projects and things. And I would say give them a task that they want to do. Don't make them do the boring stuff. Give them some fun seeds to plant. Show them how to water something. Let them pick which vegetables they want to grow, maybe. Get them involved in any way that gets them remotely interested. Let them plant those seeds, and then have them help you pick stuff, and then show them how you're preparing it, and then have them help you eat it. And I think kids naturally take pride in things, so I think if you can get them involved in that, they will get far more excited about doing the gardening part. I would not put them to task like weeding right from the get-go. I would only give them the fun stuff to do, and the sooner you can get them to the part where they're eating something that they put a seed in the ground for, I think the sooner they will make the connection of how fun it can be. I would not worry about yields and all that stuff. Now, grow what you can grow. Anything you can grow is a benefit. So I would not worry a lot about like getting really good yields of things. Just grow whatever you can that you like to eat, and then keep it, as long as you're having fun, hopefully they will too. Okay, how do you avoid the garden getting stale? I've lost some joy, and it's kind of feeling like doing chores when I go outside. Oh, yikes. Excuse me. This is like the third time that I've had this question from somebody in the past 3 weeks, and I think it's such a good question. So I think everyone probably has a different approach to this. My thought on this is let some things slide. Do not let your garden become a chore and something that you don't appreciate doing, because then why are we doing it? Like, why are we doing it if we're not enjoying it, right? And there's going to be times when you love it, and there's going to be times when you're like, oh my God, enough of this. And I would say have some grace with yourself and allow yourself to let some things slide. If you don't feel like gardening for like a whole year, like just let your edges of your garden fall apart. You can pull back, you can bring an edge back from the brink pretty easy. Don't let weeds fully overtake the thing. Do a little bit of whatever you can to manage the weeds. Do the parts of it that you think are fun for a little bit. And then when you're back into it again, and when you're back wanting to do anything, then go back to that. But I would say let's not torture ourselves and force ourselves to do tasks in the garden all the time that we just don't have any joy for, if it's going to be taking the joy out of gardening as a whole out. I mean, I don't like a lot of parts of gardening. I don't love the weeding part. Some people really like it. I don't love the weeding part at all. And there's other part. I certainly don't like the mulching part. We all know that. I complain about it all the time. But I still find joy in those tasks just because I enjoy being in the garden. But if you're to the point where you're not finding joy in that, give yourself a break and let yourself take a step back until you and do the things that you like to do and do the bare minimum you have to do to like keep the garden from going totally rogue. And then come back to it and enjoy it when you're going to have fun doing it, because there's no, let's not torture ourselves. If we're not having fun in the garden, then take a little break away from it, do something fun, and you'll come back to it. Non-gardening question. What is your favorite gin cocktail? Have you tried Monkey 47 or Schwarzwald dry gin? I have tried Monkey 47. I liked it very much. They say, this person says it makes a very elevated last word or Negroni. I don't even know what a last word is, so someone's going to have to look that one up. Okay. To be honest with you, like I love gin cocktails, but I get so excited that a lot of times I'm like, oh, forget it. We're just putting gin and tonic in a glass and we're going for it. So sometimes I do not get super creative because I get so excited for I don't have a lot of gin cocktails throughout the week. So I very much look forward to the ones I did. But I wrote down the ingredients for a gin cocktail that I had I was just telling people in Kansas City about this who might be watching. Hey guys. In Kansas City last week, I was just talking about this cocktail. It's at a restaurant in Milwaukee called Odd Duck. Extraordinarily good place. They have a cocktail there that is gin. I think it's Citadel gin specifically, but whatever. Elderflower liqueur, which I don't know that I've ever had in any other way. Sage, grapefruit juice, and lemon. And I am telling you, that cocktail was to die for. And it was so good that it went down really easy. And they came back and he said, would you like another one? I said, oh, no. That is way too good to have two of, because I can just see that going downhill very quickly. Okay, this was the gardening question that went along with that. Is there a plant, tree, or shrub that you think is totally overdone and you would never select for your garden? I think they're going to come for me. I mean, daylilies. I think there are very cool daylilies out there. I think, Stella d'Oro, I think that is overdone. And you will never see that plant in my garden. Other than that, I used to think, I try to keep more of an open mind, because I used to think things like spirea were overdone and way too ordinary and just blasé. And then all of a sudden now there's all these really cool spireas on the market that are really good shrubs. And I have a few of them in my garden that I absolutely love. I think, just going on a limb here, I think we might be getting there with hydrangeas. I mean, hydrangeas are beautiful, and I think we all love them. But I do think that there's so many hydrangeas that I'm wondering if we're not due for a little bit of a hydrangea backlash, in which they start becoming, common garden plants. And I always say, just because a plant is common doesn't mean it's not good. But I think there is a natural propensity to want something that not everybody has. My roses, including some climbers, have a lot of shrub damage this year here in Michigan, Zone 6A. Should I cut the damaged stem to the ground even if it looks good on top, or should I leave it? So, personally, I would leave it, especially in these cooler zones, which I consider, it's funny how our perspectives shift. I consider 6A, which technically I'm in, to be a cooler zone. Listen, you can prune back roses later too. You can, if there's something dead, you can always cut it out later. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. If the rabbits have chewed like all the way around the stem, then it's probably a goner and you should probably cut it below that. But usually they just take like little bits of it. And if it's otherwise rose that's in pretty good shape, it can probably withstand that kind of treatment. So I wouldn't be too quick to prune off too much. I'd probably aim to prune a rose like I would if that damage wasn't there, and then wait and see on the things that are damaged. Are there any flower seedlings that you plant outside before last frost? If so, what are they, and how long before your last frost date? Yes. 3, 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. Sweet peas. Some people say sweet peas go outside 6 weeks before your last frost. Now, they certainly want to grow on cool, and they are, by the way, the first thing that's going to get moved out to this greenhouse as soon as I'm sure it's not going to blow across the neighborhood. They want to be growing on cool. They want to be, even my basement is cool, like 60 degrees, 55 degrees, and they want to grow on cooler than that. And yes, you can plant those out, but I think if you get the problem, I think for some of us, it depends so much on your area. Like here, we can get really, really cold here. We can get down to like 20 degrees is not at all unheard of for this time of year, and that would be too cold. So then you got to be ready to protect those in some way. Regular snap peas. Oh, you asked for flowers, obviously. Sorry. Snapdragons. About 2 weeks before your last frost date. Now, sometimes I miss this, and I always kick myself thinking I could have had those things out sooner. Larkspur and nigella. Think about those things that are considered to be cold flowers. Those reseed like crazy in my vegetable garden. And as soon as I see those seedlings popping up, I know it's totally fine to have those out. Now, actually, I don't even seed those inside anymore. I actually will have thrown seeds. I don't know if I did yet this year. I will have thrown seeds on the beds, and they're fine just sitting there, and then they'll pop up when they're ready. But I would say look for those plants that are considered cold season flowers, because most of those you can be looking at putting out before your last frost date. But again, depending on what kind of weather swings you get, be ready to jump in if they need a little bit of protection some night. Marianne says, unfortunately, I have a wood hydro pole in my backyard, what we in Wisconsin call a telephone pole, I'm assuming. It is against very tall cedars, but we can see it. I love your climbing hydrangea. I was considering planting one to climb the pole. Do you need to prune it, and does your grow any higher than it is? Approximately how high do you think it is? I know I cannot let it grow all the way up. Thank you so much, blah, blah. Okay, I would not recommend a climbing hydrangea in that circumstance for a number of reasons. The first being that they are slow. So if you plant it now, if you're trying to cover that thing, you plant it now, you're going to be waiting years, several, possibly many years before that thing gets the height that you want it to have. Now, maybe we're talking about a shady situation based on what you've described here, and maybe that's why you're thinking about a climbing hydrangea. It's also, I don't know what the sort of legalities are in terms of planting on those poles. But, that thing is stuck in there. And if something would happen to that pole and they have to do some work on it or something, then you're going to lose your climbing hydrangea. So for a variety of reasons, I don't think climbing hydrangeas would be the right call. To answer your other question, mine is probably 30 feet tall or so, and it's up to the top of the tree where it's been topped. So I don't know if it's stopped growing because that's how high it got, or that's just how high they get. But that's the big tall one that I have on the dead ash tree. So I would think, by the way, I would go for a really aggressive annual vine in that spot. Annual vines are perfect for that because they go up, they come down, they don't sucker. You're going to have to probably get them started, and you might have to sort of like, I don't know, maybe you can figure out some way to put up a string trellis or something. Anyway, Kim says, have you ever tried pruning hydrangeas twice a year, early spring and early summer, to minimize flopping? If so, any tips particularly for hydrangea standards? Also would love any tips to minimize hydrangea leaf tire. I have heard of this, and I have never done this. I really wonder, and actually I tried to look into that a little bit to see if I could find some information for you about that. And it must not be a like commonly accepted practice because I don't see a lot of information online about it. I really wonder like how you time that right to really not push your blooms super, super late, because anytime you prune, you are, except in that early season dormant thing, you are pushing your flowering time back. So that's like one of the things that happens if you do the so-called Chelsea chop, which we do in our area usually around early to mid-June, where you take a perennial that gets tall and you basically chop it in half. You reduce the size of that and it tends to get bushier, but you also push the flowering period back by a few weeks on it. So when you're thinking about things that already bloom late, like some of those hydrangeas, I wonder what the effect of that is on flowering. I get the concept behind it, but I feel like you might really be sacrificing something. Anyway, I don't have a lot of information on that, sorry to say. Leaf tires. Leaf tires are those things, particularly you find them on hydrangea arborescens in particular. You'll see like leaves kind of sealed together. Oh, so they seal up your flower. They're ugly and they kind of eat up your flower buds. So you can peel open those little packages and pull out the little caterpillar that's hiding inside of there. You can just nip off that little that little leaf package all together and throw that away. You got to understand how, by the way, they're not a big deal. I don't think this is something where you need to start spraying for this, because they're just not worth it. So you have to understand the life cycle of these to understand how to outsmart them. So leaf tire caterpillars, which are what is eating the plant and makes those little packages, come from a tiny little brown moth. That tiny little brown moth is hatched from the larvae from the previous year that has fallen in the soil below, hatches from that, flies up, flies around, lays its eggs on your hydrangea. The eggs hatch, little larvae comes out, ties itself up into a little pouch, and then proceeds to eat that little area of your hydrangea. So the thing to do is to try to stop the cycle of life, probably at the point where they fall off and go into the soil where they overwinter, right? Like that seems like because you're not going to, these are tiny little moths, you're probably not going to see them. Or the other thing you can do is stop them after they've laid those eggs. So it's a good idea to clean those things up anyway, or some people just open them up and say that the birds will come and eat all those little caterpillars. Another thing that some people say is, this often happens, at least in our area, in early May is the part where those moths come out and they're laying those eggs. Some people say cut your hydrangea arborescens down to like 4 inches and throw all that away. Now that is a pretty aggressive thing to do, to be perfectly honest, but I bet it'd be just fine. When we went to Bailey Nursery last year and they were introducing flowerful hydrangea, which is a type of hydrangea arborescens, they showed us different times that they cut it back, and within 5 weeks that thing was in a full flush of foliage again. And I think there might be merit to this idea that if you really have a problem with them year after year with your hydrangea arborescens only, after, perhaps like look up if you can when these things are laying their eggs in early May, cut all the stems back to 4 inches. I mean, maybe just try this. Experiment. Maybe don't do it with all of them. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Cut everything off. Throw those stems away. You're going to get a nice big flush of foliage. Your blooming is going to be delayed, just like we talked about before, but you might end that cycle of leaf tires, because then you're not going to have them in your soil for the next year because you have removed all of those eggs and all of that larvae that's coming around. Something to try if you've got a really big problem and you want to take a little bit of a chance. I did find that information on several university extension sites though, so it's not unheard of to do that. Here's somebody says, we had a very powerful windstorm. In-laws lost a giant Scotch pine that had grown right next to their driveway and was a focal point. They're looking to replace this tree with a small 20 to 25 foot ornamental tree. So in 5B6A, full sun, gets very hot there in summer. Above 90 degrees during the day for a full week. I don't know if that's that hot anymore, to be honest. This person was thinking maybe a Royal Star Magnolia or Autumn Brilliant Serviceberry, but I'd love to hear other ideas. I personally would not do the Magnolia because I feel like Magnolia does, obviously we've got a beautiful flowering on it. I don't feel like there's a ton of interest for a focal point tree to have for the rest of the year. Like I feel like for a focal point spot, it's gotta bring more to the table, and I'm not sure that a Magnolia does that. Serviceberry is a great option. Love them. That is definitely 4-season interest. I'd have to check to see what Autumn Brilliance gets to. I would say it's more like 15 feet than 20 feet probably. Here are some of my suggestions. Heptacodium, Seven Suns tree. That has beautiful, shiny, big leaf foliage. Then you get these flowers, white flowers in late summer. Then you get red calyxes that are left, which I actually think are prettier than the flowers. And then you get exfoliating bark for winter. What else? I wrote some down. Cornus cusa. I know we think of flowering dogwood, is it Chinese or Japanese? The non-native flowering dogwood as being an understory tree. But for those of us in these colder zones, I have one growing in an understory a little bit, They can take and perhaps even want a little bit more sun. Take a look at the rosy teacups that's right off my patio. That's pretty much full sun. Protected area, but pretty much full sun. Seems to be doing fine. I do see a little bit of like signs that the leaves are a little like, they get a little, they don't get washed out. They actually turn a little dark. They might be a little unhappy with it, but not much. Uh, the native fringe tree, Chinensis virginica, beautiful tree. The only thing to know about that, it is the other host for emerald ash borer. So in most places, you should probably think about treating that once a year with an insecticide. Crabapple, great spot for a really amazing crabapple. So those are a few that came to my mind. Tracy says, is there any way to tell what type of an existing clematis is so you know when and how to prune? There is no way to know that without spending a year not pruning it and then watching when it prunes, what the flowers look like, and then figuring it out from there. So if it's there aren't a lot of evergreen type clematis that are really on the market. You're really going to have to kind of go looking for those in most places, except out where it's really warm. They have some really good ones. Those tend to have a different leaf shape than others, but those will bloom super early, like first thing, those will bloom. If you have the large flowering types, which are the group 2 types, those tend to have very large flowers, and they tend to bloom, I would say in June around here, pretty early. And if you've got a group 3 pruning type, some of those flowers can be bigger, some can be smaller or bell-shaped, but those tend to bloom like, God, I'd have to look at my photo album, late June and beyond. So that's a good way to tell. The other thing is that you probably, if you assume you probably don't have that group 1, which is never pruned, you can prune group 2s and group 3s in similar ways. In fact, I do this all the time where I will prune like half of them, half of the stems. Well, with group 2s, I often do 3. I do not pruning any of them, pruning some back by like a third and pruning another third of them back by 2/3. So what I was saying before my memory card filled up was that I will do that with my group 3s as well if I want them to bloom higher. So you can do some light pruning on some of these, even if you don't know what kind it is. But the best way to figure it out, if you really want to know, is you got to let them go for 1 year and then take a look at when it flowers and what those flowers look like. You might be able to identify the exact variety, but at the very least, you should be able to identify what group it's in. What is a plant that you wish you could grow but can't because it would not work in your climate or it's invasive in your area, etc.? Same answer as I've had for a few years now. My sort of the plant that makes my heart thump, diorama, Angel's fishing rod. Theoretically a zone 7 plant. I think that's pushing it. Digging Dog sells that plant and says you can grow them in containers. But I asked Matt Mattis, who can grow, that man is a master at growing things. I asked him if he'd ever tried. He says he's tried many of them and he can't make it work. And I'm telling you, if he can't make it work, I can't either. So I'm not going to spend my money on it. But that is a plant. Oh my gosh, do I want that plant? And I don't mind pushing a plant that I desperately want, but it just seems like there is no hope to even make that work in any way. So, oh well. What is a plant you could never live without in your garden? I thought about this because I like this question a lot. And you probably maybe aren't surprised to know that this is kind of a boring answer. It's lady's mantle, Alchemilla mollis. Just the other day, I'm all of a sudden there's all kinds of changes happening in the garden and all sorts of places that I'm trying to troubleshoot plants for. And so many times I come back to Alchemilla mollis, not just because I love those chartreuse flowers and I love the look of the leaves, but also because it's so adaptable to so many conditions. Listen, I talked to a lot of people in Kansas City who said that it was funny. All 3 of the speakers at this symposium that I was speaking at in Kansas City, we all talked about lady's mantle. And then so many people came up to us afterwards and like, I can't grow it here. I think it might be a humidity issue, maybe humidity plus drainage. But I don't get the drainage thing because my mom grows in heavy, thick clay, and she's got no problem growing it. So I'm not, and I mean, it's not like Wisconsin isn't humid. So I'm not sure what it is that makes it tricky. But here, it's easy. It's a cinch to grow, and so adaptable to so many different places. And I just consider it one of those problem solver plants. I'd be really sad if I did not have that plant in my arsenal. I've been wanting to plant a few sky pencil holly or green tower boxwood against a large blank wall in my house. However, the planting area is very narrow and cannot be adjusted. In your experience with the roots of the hollies or boxwoods damaged my poured concrete foundation since they would need to be planted only a few inches away. I would say neither one of those would have any effect on a foundation. Definitely not boxwood. I don't have a lot of experience with sky pencil holly, but what I know of it is that would not be a problem for you. You mentioned heaving in a garden stroll video where plants heave out of the ground in winter. I think I have foam flower, Tiarella, that has done that, which would make sense because Tiarellas and Heucherellas, those plants are notorious for heaving out of the ground. Do I just dig a deeper hole to fix it? What can I do to prevent plant heaving? So plant heaving happens because there's just the freeze-thaw cycle of the soil just pushes things up, and it often happens with newly planted things. So all the things that heaved for me were stuff I planted in fall that had no chance to spread roots out beyond their root ball. But yeah, all you do is pull it out of the hole, dig the hole a little deeper, pop it back in, and hopefully by the next winter, it has enough root structure to hold itself in that hole. Although, like I said, ancient heucheras will pop themselves right out for some reason. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. You just pop them back in. Did you figure out why your sweet potatoes didn't produce last year? I want to try them, but I'm waiting for more information. Yeah, well, several people made some very good comments, and I'm pretty sure that I got no sweet potatoes last year because my soil was too good. So apparently, really rich soil, which probably my raised beds are because I've been amending them over the years. Apparently that really rich soil is not so good for sweet potatoes. If you have different ideas on that and you are a good sweet potato grower, please chime in the comments. Can you tell me why the stems on roses and raspberries are called canes and other plants are just stems? Random, I know, but just curious. Love this question because I had never thought about it. It's a damn good question. I looked it up, and it seems to have to do with as far as I can tell, botanically speaking, well, there's no real difference between it, but the distinction is that things that have kind of a pithy center are considered to be canes versus stems. So that's what I found anyway. But I love that question because it made me go look it up because I had never asked myself that. What plants would you recommend for spots that get blasted with hot late day sun, but spend most of the day in shade? In-ground and planter ideas both helpful. This is zone 4 to 5 urban garden. Tall, skinny plants are a big need. Zone 4 to 5, I think the thing you got to remember is that we can push shade plants into way more sun than people in warmer zones can. You guys have all seen, I grow this Earth Angel hosta and other hostas in full sun. And yeah, it gets crispy by the end of the season, but you know what? It looks pretty damn good the rest of the time. So in zone 4 to 5, I think you have the benefit of a little bit more latitude on that than people in the south would. So if you were more southerly, I would suggest in that situation, you got to aim yourself more for sun plants that you're pushing into shade for a good part of the day. In the northerly parts of the country, in that zone, I would say you got to be looking for shade plants, which are going to be able to handle that hot, or shadier plants that are going to be able to handle that hot late day sun, because the sun is not as intense as it is down south. I don't have specific recommendations off the top of my head for tall skinny things, but there's like there's a lot of people looking for tall skinny things. So do a little Googling and I'll bet you find something. But, you know, in a cooler zone like ours, I would think about planting a shade plant there, which is going to be able to handle the sun. And in a warmer zone, I would think about planting a sun plant that's going to be able to handle the shade, if that makes sense. I'm located in southeastern Wisconsin as well. I was curious as to what you start planting, when you start planting the vegetable garden. I always feel like I'm too late and my cold crops struggle. Yeah, me too. All the time. All the time. I really think, there's a lot of planting we should be doing sooner than we think. First of all, I would just say that Meg at, what is the name of her Instagram channel? She might even have a YouTube. She wrote a book on succession planting. She's in Minnesota. She is like the master of the vegetable garden. And certainly when it comes to cold climates. And Nikki Jabor has an excellent book on cold climate gardening, vegetable gardening. So I would check out both of those resources for specifics. But I do the same thing. I feel like this is a very Midwestern thing, or either a very traditional thing. There is a question: when do you plant your garden? My neighbors ask me this all the time. When are you planting your garden? And it's really strange, because I think my grandparents probably did this too, which is where there is a date on the calendar at which they go out and they plant the whole vegetable garden all at the same time. Well, I don't see how that works, but clearly that's how it was kind of done. And I think for some reason, I kind of fall into that a little bit. So the answer is, I'm going to be planting out peas, snap peas, very soon. And I have started kale inside. I tell you what, I'm having so much better luck here because of our extremes in temperatures here. Having so much better luck starting some of these things inside and transplanting them out to the garden. So right now inside, I've got snap peas started, and I've planted lettuce and kale. And all of those can move out. The kale, certainly, and the peas will be hardier than the lettuce, but the lettuce can get out there soon, especially if there's a little bit of cover. I think the answer is generally earlier than you think, and especially if you're running into that. That's the other thing. You might want to think about starting some of these things like kale and those cold crops inside, so that you can get them started and get them going. And then they have enough time to develop before the summer heat come and they're bolting right away. I live in Montana, outside of Columbus, west of Billings. We are, according to the USDA zone map, zone 5, but in the last 3 years, we've gotten a -30 for most of January and February. What are your thoughts on the new zones? Here's my thoughts on zones in general. I think that the zone hardiness map was always imperfect from the get-go. It is, after all, the only thing that thing measures is an average coldest temperature, one moment in time. It is useful, but imperfect. With the changing climate situation, I think it's even less useful than it used to be. I think we must not put too much credence in it anymore, because everything has changed so much that anything that we used to use to sort of judge these things is probably no longer as helpful as it used to be. So I would say be advised by your zones, and then take a look at what's happening around you, and then plant according to what you see, not what some map is telling you. Since you have some pups, do you know of any perennial plants that repel dogs? I live on a corner lot in a suburb where several people allow their dogs to walk on top of and lift their legs on my shrubs despite signage asking them not to. Physical barriers are practical. Underplanting the shrubs with something unappealing to dogs would be ideal, instead of trying to appeal to their human counterparts. Heather at Here She Grows just posted something the other day. She had a beautiful, what was it? It was a sample evergreen that she got from some plant company that was planted out by her sidewalk. And the neighbor dogs absolutely killed that thing by peeing on it. And she is so frustrated. And I don't blame people for that. I would like to say for the record that I do not allow my dogs to pee on other people's gardens. I do let them pee on their grass. And if they do the other thing, I absolutely pick it up, which you must. If you have the biggest dogs in the neighborhood, you are responsible for all dog poop. So you have to pick up any poop you see. So I don't know of anything that would repel dogs by scent or anything like that. Although maybe if you get something that's highly scented and like repels deer, maybe like geraniums. I don't know. I've not tried this, but maybe something like a geranium macrorhizum would be I would imagine to a dog that would be incredibly odoriferous. So perhaps that maybe you start looking at things that are like physically imposing, like something with thorns, like roses or barberries. Although I don't know that any of those things. I mean, my dogs are running around with rose canes stuck in their fur all the time, so I don't think they seem to care. I don't know. If you figure it out, let us know. But I would try those two things. Something very stinky, look for something that repels deer because it's very, very smelly. Maybe dogs wouldn't like that either. And maybe a physical something. Belinda says, you mentioned the product Boxwood Restore and Protect Mix. I talked the other day about top boxes. I'll put links to that in the description for you. Dogs love Espoma tones. What about the one you mentioned? So I'm only answering this question because I want to make everyone understand there's a big difference between that Top Buxus product that I talked about, which is Boxwood specific, and all the Espoma fertilizers, which is that the Espoma fertilizers are natural and organic. Yes, dogs love them. Yes, they will eat them, which is unpleasant, and you shouldn't really allow it to happen, but also it's all natural stuff, so dogs are generally fine. I hate to tell you how much Espoma my dogs have eaten over the years. I think that chicken manure is a big ingredient in a lot of those fertilizers. Hey, stop. No. Speaking of dogs, I think that's why it's so appealing to them. But that Top Buxus is a synthetic product. So you've got to treat those things as two totally separate kinds of things. Anything organic is going to be kind of hard to screw up. You can kind of play willy-nilly with the instructions in terms of how much to put on. It's just probably never going to hurt your plants. But those synthetic products, you got to pay attention to those instructions really carefully. Anyway, long story short, I guess your question was, do dogs care about it? No, they don't care about the Restore and Protect or the fertilizer because it doesn't smell good to them. It smells like synthetic fertilizer, kind of chemically. I mean, it doesn't to me, but it smells like a synthetic fertilizer to them, not like an organic fertilizer that has organic stuff in it. But just make sure that you understand that there's a big difference between synthetic fertilizers and organic fertilizers. And you really need to pay attention to instructions on synthetic fertilizers because you can burn and damage your plants with those. They are far less forgiving. Michelle says, does being a garden influencer, in quotes, change anything about how you garden? If so, how does it impact your choices? What does Mr. Much More Patient think about your gardening fame? Yeah, absolutely. I would be completely lying if I told you that it doesn't make a difference, and I don't make decisions if it doesn't affect the decisions I make in my garden. In most ways, I think it's a positive effect. I think it forces me into addressing issues sooner than I might otherwise. It'd probably be real easy to look the other way on some things if I wasn't showing it to the world or a small part of the world. I think it forces me to think creatively about how to solve problems, and I think probably overall it's a net benefit. The negative part of that is that although I would say I've gotten much better over the years at dealing with this negative part of it, is that there is a certain amount of joy that kind of goes away when you feel like you need to document everything you're doing in your garden. But actually, last year, I really kind of changed this up, and maybe even before that a little bit, which is why I started doing those garden strolls, because I found myself, first of all, everyone who does garden videos on YouTube will tell you it takes so much longer when you're taping something, but it also takes some of the joy out of just puddling around in your garden. So that's why I started doing those casual garden strolls, because I wanted to keep people up to date on what I was doing in the garden, but I didn't necessarily want to have to document everything I was doing in the garden, because sometimes I just want to go in the garden and I just want to go hang. I just want to go out and pull a weed here and pull a weed there, and I don't want to have to worry about a camera angle, although you guys know I don't worry too much about that. Or come up with a narrative or come up with a storyline or worry about the fact that now I'm going to have to edit this video. So that was a good change for me last year, was adding on those casual garden strolls so that I was able to keep you up to date on what was happening in the garden without necessarily showing you every little thing that happens in the garden. And I don't know that you guys want to see every little thing that happens anyway here. I mean, that's never really been what this channel's been about. Oh, Mr. Much More Patient. I don't know. I mean, we don't talk about it a lot. I don't think it affects him in a lot of ways, except when, if we're out in public and someone sees me or whatever, it happens. What's funny is when we're with a large group of people, and I don't like, there's a lot of people who don't know that I do this, because it doesn't come up in conversation. So it is odd when I'm with a group of people and they don't realize that I make videos on YouTube. And then someone will recognize me and start talking to me, and then they'll say to Rich, oh, Mr. Much More Patient. Someone will say to him, why does that person know Erin? And he'll be like, oh, well, she makes these videos. So it's kind of funny. I think he's probably sort of proud of it. I don't know. It certainly doesn't bother him at all. Never. He is unfazed by most things, and that's one of them. I think, by the way, I think he really appreciates some of the benefits that come with this. Like, I think he's really happy, like, every once in a while, plants that I didn't order show up, and they're great, and he loves that. And I think he loves the fact that the garden looks amazing. I mean, he's happy not to have to be too much of a part of that, but he appreciates it, and he loves it, and he likes I mean, he's as much of a guy who takes people at our house for a garden tour as I am. So he enjoys that part of it, I think. But it is sort of funny when we're with people. I mean, this happens often on Mackinac Island. I get recognized a lot on Mackinac Island because I think so many gardeners go there. And so I'm there in a completely different context when I'm there, and I'm usually there with a crew of raucous sailors, and there'll be raucous activity going on, and someone will recognize me and they'll be like, what is going on right now? And Rich has to get into an explanation. Oh, I did it again. Mr. Much More Patient has to get into it, and explain what's happening. Should Weird Al Yankovic be allowed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And what are your favorite gardening shoes? I mean, there's no way I'm not answering that question. Unpopular, possibly, opinion, no. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what the criteria is, but I don't know that Weird Al Yankovic is a serious musician. There's a lot of people who don't think that. And I would guess that you're one of them since you asked that question, because the amount of space that Weird Al Yankovic takes up in my brain is none. But that's where I'm at. What are your favorite gardening shoes? Old tennis shoes. I mean, I used to do flip-flops, but now my feet can't. First of all, I realized that I'm probably going to cut off a toe or step on something terrible doing that. So I do try not to garden in flip-flops as much anymore. But I usually, the oldest pair of tennis shoes usually becomes my favorite gardening shoes. I do like bogs when I need to wear boots. I like bogs boots. Those are pretty good. My everydays. Can you see them? They're over here. My everyday shoes are Bluntstones now, and I adore those, but I like them too much to wear them in the garden. I love question and answer time, thank God, because you're sitting through a lot of it. I'm very interested in how your Hoselink solar path lights by the steps you put out to the creek are doing. I'm tempted to pull the trigger, but they're a little pricey, and I'd love to see how they're doing after a few years out in the garden. Do you pull them for wintertime? Okay, so not an ad, but it's going to sound like one. I got my first Hoselink solar lights 4 years ago, and they are the globes that are in the vegetable garden. I put those I think I had those somewhere else, but then I moved them into the vegetable garden, and they have never moved from those spots. They are out there all winter long. They are still going strong 4 years later. The path lights that go out to the vegetable garden, which are the ones that this person is talking about, have also, I do not bring anything in for the winter. Everything stays out for the winter. There is one of them after, what are we at now? Well, some of those I actually moved. Not all of those were new. I actually think some of those were older. One of those is a little weird, like those are lights that stay dim, and then when you walk by them, they get brighter, and that function on one of them is not working well. That's it. And that's 2 years, 3 years for some of them. And then last year we added the stainless steel path lights to the path to the garage. Those I like the most because those are fully motion. They have 3 settings on them. And the one that I like them on is that they're off until motion comes along. Those, well, first of all, I love the look of those. Those I love them. I've decided I don't really want lights in my garden most of the time. I don't want that. I want them to be off until I need them, I think, or I want them to be off until 10 o'clock at night, and then I don't want, or on until 10 o'clock at night, dim, and then I want them off. But those stainless steel ones work great. I will say this. One of them broke. The stake that was in the bottom of it, so you kind of insert a stake in the bottom of it, I assume the puppy ran into it, and so it sheared off that stake, and now it's kind of stuck in there. I imagine I could pry that end out somehow and put a new stake in there, but that happened. And I will also say that I am shocked by how far away those recognize movement, because I've noticed recently that in winter, without a lot of foliage around them, there's a couple of them that are closest to the house that will actually pick up movement when I walk into the kitchen in the middle of the night and turn on the light. And they will turn on then. So I'm assuming they're picking up the movement from that. But they are all working great. I've talked to somebody in Kansas City who bought them, who said they also were using them in some shade, which those ones on the path to the vegetable garden are, and they work great. I don't know. I haven't tried other solar lights, so I have nothing to compare them to, but my opinion, based on what other people told me about solar lights, was that usually they are kind of a disappointment because they're just dim and they don't do much. And these lights, I don't want this to sound like an ad, because I do work with hose lighting, by the way. But so just know that they're not paying me for this, but they pay me sometimes. These lights are good enough that I'm not entertaining the idea of ever putting electric lights in those places where I have them. So there's that. That's my thought. Okay, that is the end of the Q&A. I think I've let Jim put him down on this. But anyway, I hope you guys are doing great. You know what? I will probably, if you guys like this, leave a comment. Let me know. Maybe we'll do these sort of regularly as we get through spring here, when everyone's got so many questions. Because I like to be able to answer them in this way, and it's very easy for me to find them when they're all in one place. If I have to filter through all the comments on a specific video, it gets hard to pull comments out of that. So it's very nice when they're all in one spot. Let me know what you think about this. If this greenhouse is standing by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll do a tour of this greenhouse. I'll tell you what's going on in here. It's very cold outside, and these little temporary greenhouses, I tell you, they don't hold that much heat. I'm going to get out of here. We will see you soon. Thank you for watching. As always, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, follow along. Fun things will be happening. Actually, really fun things are happening. And I have to tell you, there are some epic deliveries coming to this house this week. I can't believe they're all kind of happening in 1 week, because there's some cool stuff happening. Oh, I'm such a tease. Have a great day in your garden. We'll see you soon. Cheers.